Nothing travels faster than light. You have heard that. Everybody has heard that. And I bet most of you believe it the way you believe the speed limit on the highway. Somebody in charge put up a sign, 300,000 kilometers per second. Do not exceed. And nature, being a good cop, enforces it. That picture is completely wrong, and I can prove it. But first, let me be fair to the wrong idea, because it is a very reasonable wrong idea. It is the kind of wrong idea that a very clever person would come up with, and in fact, very clever people did come up with it for a very long time. Here is how the wrong picture works. You have got an object. A baseball, say. You throw it, and it goes at some speed. You throw it harder. It goes faster. You put it on a rocket. The rocket fires. The ball goes faster still. Perfectly sensible. Every time you add energy, you add speed. You have seen this your entire life. You push a shopping cart gently, it rolls slow. You push it hard, it rolls fast. The whole world seems to work this way. More push, more speed. So what happens if you just keep adding energy? You keep adding, and the speed goes up and up. At some point you ought to hit 300,000 kilometers per second. The speed of light. And at that point something stops you. Some force, some wall, some barrier built into nature that says no further. That is how most people imagine it. A wall, a ceiling, a fence at the edge of the yard. And the question they naturally ask is, what is the wall made of? What is the physical thing that prevents you from going faster? Is it friction with space itself? Some kind of drag from the vacuum? A force that pushes back harder the faster you go, like wind resistance? But cosmic? Because if there is a limit, something must be enforcing it. Right? There must be some mechanism, some physical process that grabs your spaceship by the tail and says, no, you are done accelerating. And that intuition comes from a lifetime of experience. Every limit you have ever encountered in the real world was enforced by something physical. The speed limit on the road is enforced by friction and engine power. The depth limit for a diver is enforced by water pressure. The height limit for a building is enforced by the strength of materials. Every limit has a mechanism. So it seems perfectly natural to ask, what is the mechanism for the speed of light? I want you to sit with that question for a moment. What is the wall made of? It sounds perfectly reasonable. It sounds like the kind of question physics ought to answer. And for about 200 years, from Newton to the late 1800s, if you had asked a physicist this question, they would not have had a good answer, because the framework they were using did not have one. They knew light had a speed. They measured it quite well by the 1800s, but nobody could explain why that speed should be special, or why anything should be forbidden from exceeding it. And that is exactly where the wrong picture leads you astray. Because the answer is not that there is a wall made of some exotic material. The answer is that there is no wall. There is nothing doing the stopping. Nothing pushes back. Nothing resists. The reason you cannot go faster than light is not that something prevents it. The reason is that faster than light does not mean what you think it means. The words are empty. They point to nothing real. And understanding why requires you to throw away your picture of space and time and replace it with something radically different. Let me show you what I mean with something simple. Imagine you are standing on a flat field, and you can walk in any direction, north, south, east, west. You have got a compass, and you decide to walk due north. You take 100 steps. All 100 go north. Now I ask you, how far north did you go? 100 steps, obviously. But now suppose you do not walk due north. You angle a little bit northeast. You still take 100 steps. Same effort, same total distance walked. But how far north did you go? Less than 100 steps. Because some of your walking went east. The more you angle toward east, the less progress you make to the north. If you walk due east, you make zero progress to the north. All 100 steps go sideways. Your total walking speed has not changed. 100 steps is 100 steps, but the way those steps are distributed between north and east has changed. That seems almost insultingly simple. Of course, that is how it works. Children understand this. But I want you to hold that picture in your mind. Hold it tight, because something almost exactly like this is happening with the speed of light, except the two directions are not north and east. They are space and time. Here is what Einstein figured out, and it took a mind of extraordinary courage to see it, because the evidence had been sitting there for decades, and nobody else could bring themselves to believe what it meant. In 1887, Michelson and Morley ran a famous experiment trying to detect the motion of the Earth through what they thought was a medium for light, the luminiferous ether. They failed. The speed of light came out the same in every direction, regardless of how the Earth was moving. Other physicists found this embarrassing. They invented complicated excuses. Lorentz proposed that objects physically contracted when they moved. Fitzgerald had a similar idea. They were patching a broken picture, adding epicycles. Einstein did something different. He looked at the data, all of it, and he took it at face value. He said, what if the speed of light really is the same for everyone? Not because of some mechanical trick, not because something contracts or slows down to compensate, but because space and time themselves are structured in a way that makes it so. And from that one commitment, he discovered that space and time are not separate things. They are woven together into a single fabric, one unified entity, space-time, 4 dimensions, 3 of space and 1 of time, all knitted together by geometry. And every object in the universe is always moving through this space-time at exactly the same total rate, always, without exception. How fast? At the speed of light. Right now, sitting wherever you are moving through space-time at the speed of light. But I am sitting still, you say. Yes, you are sitting still in space. You are not moving through space at all, or only very slowly relative to the Earth. And that means all of your motion through space-time is going in the time direction. You are barreling through time at the full speed of light. Your clock is ticking at the maximum possible rate. Time is flowing for you as fast as it can possibly flow. Go back to the field with the compass. When you stand still in space, you are walking due north, and north is time. All 100 steps go toward time. Maximum progress through time. Maximum progress through time. Now start moving through space. Get in a car. Get in a jet. Get in a rocket. You are now walking a little bit northeast. Some of your steps are going east, which is space. And because you still have the same total 100 steps, because your total motion through space-time has not changed, you have fewer steps going north, fewer steps going into time. Your clock ticks slower, not because something is interfering with your clock, not because there is a force slowing it down, not because of friction or resistance or any mechanical thing, but because you have tilted your direction of motion through space-time, and less of that motion is now pointing in the time direction. The clock is perfectly healthy. It is keeping perfect time. There is simply less time for it to keep. The faster you move through space, the more you angle away from time. The fewer steps go into time. Your clock slows down further. And this is not philosophy. This is not a way of thinking about things. This is a measured, verified, experimentally confirmed physical fact. In 1971, Joseph Hafele and Richard Keating took cesium atomic clocks, the most precise timekeeping instruments available, put them on commercial airplanes, and flew them around the world, east and west. Then they brought them home and compared them to identical clocks that had stayed on the ground in Washington. The flying clocks were behind. They had ticked fewer times. They had experienced less elapsed time. The difference was tiny, a few hundred nanoseconds, because airplanes are laughably slow compared to light. But the difference was there, exactly as predicted. We have confirmed this with far greater precision since then. Every satellite in the GPS constellation has to account for relativistic time effects, or your position reading would drift by about 10 kilometers every day. Particle accelerators routinely produce unstable particles that should decay in microseconds, but survive for milliseconds because they are moving so close to the speed of light that their internal clocks have nearly stopped from our perspective. And there is a beautiful natural example. Muons, created high in the atmosphere when cosmic rays slam into air molecules, should not survive long enough to reach the ground. They are born about 15 kilometers up, and they live at rest for only about 2/millionths of a second. Even traveling near the speed of light, they should cover about 600 meters before decaying. But they reach the surface by the thousands, every second, because from our frame their clocks run so slowly that their brief lives stretch long enough to cross the whole atmosphere. From the muon's own frame, something equally strange occurs. The atmosphere's length contracted, squished down to a thin sliver, so the distance is shorter. Both descriptions are correct, both are physically real. The geometry of space-time guarantees their equivalence. This is not optional. This is not theoretical speculation. This is the architecture of reality. So what happens as you go faster and faster through space? You are angling more and more away from the time direction. More of your space-time motion goes into space, less goes into time. Your clocks slow down more and more. And when you reach the speed of light through space, you have rotated all the way. All of your motion through space-time is now going in the space direction. None of it goes into the time direction. Your clock has stopped completely. For a photon, a particle of light, this is its permanent condition. Time does not pass for a photon. It does not age. It does not experience duration. From the photon's perspective, if we can even use that word meaningfully, the moment of its creation and the moment of its absorption are the same moment. A photon emitted by a star 50 million light years away, a photon that from our perspective has been traveling through space for 50 million years, has experienced exactly zero elapsed time. It was born and it died in the same instant from its own reckoning. Its entire allotment of space-time motion went into crossing space. Nothing remained for time. Every beam of light you have ever seen, every ray of sunshine warming your face, every photon from a distant galaxy that traveled for billions of years to reach your eye, all of them arrived in what for them was a single frozen instant. They are timeless travelers, not because they are special, not because light is magical, but because photons have no mass, and having no mass means they cannot stand still in space, which means they must pour all of their motion into the space direction, which means none is left for time. So the question has changed completely. When someone asks, why can I not go faster than light? The answer is you are already going at the speed of light. You always have been, every moment of your life. The question is not how to speed up. It is how to redirect the motion you already have. And the speed of light through space is not a barrier you slam into. It is what happens when you have redirected all of your motion away from time and into space. There is nothing left to redirect. You have used it all up. Asking to go faster than light is like asking someone walking due north to go more north than north. The request does not make sense. It is not forbidden by some law. It is forbidden by arithmetic. Now let me deal with what happens when you try to get close. Because the geometry of space-time is not shaped like my flat walking field. It is curved in a particular ferocious way, and that curvature has consequences for anyone trying to accelerate. When you accelerate, what you are really doing is rotating your direction of motion through space-time. You are tilting away from the time direction and toward the space direction, and this takes energy. For small tilts at everyday speeds, the energy cost is modest. You burn some fuel, you push a little harder, the shopping cart responds nicely. But as the tilt gets larger, as you approach that full rotation into the space direction, the energy cost does not grow gradually. It grows savagely. At 90% of the speed of light, the energy required to accelerate further is several times what Newtonian physics would predict. At 99%, it is about 7 times as much. At 99.9%, it is over 22 times. Each additional decimal place costs dramatically more. The curve does not just steepen, it goes vertical. This is connected to the famous equation E equals mc squared. That equation, in its more complete form, tells you that the total energy associated with a moving object grows as it speeds up. Some people describe this as the mass increasing. Modern physicists prefer to say the inertia increases. The resistance to further acceleration. The object becomes more and more stubborn, harder and harder to push, not because new atoms are appearing inside it, not because it is gaining weight, but because the geometry of space-time makes each additional rotation more expensive. At the speed of light, this resistance becomes infinite. No finite amount of energy could complete that last vanishing bit of rotation. Not the energy of a nuclear bomb, not the energy of a star, not the energy of every star and every galaxy in the observable universe combined. The geometry simply does not close. It is like trying to reach the horizon by walking toward it. You can walk forever, you will never arrive, because the horizon is not a destination. It is a feature of the geometry of the Earth. Picture it from inside the ship. You fire your engines. You accelerate. From Earth, people see you getting faster. 90% of light speed. 95, 99. But from your seat, nothing feels different. You feel a steady push. You keep accelerating at the same rate you always did. Your instruments say you are speeding up at a constant pace. And yet, from Earth's perspective, your gains have slowed to a crawl. You burn the same fuel, push just as hard, and gain almost nothing. The gap between 99% and 99.1% requires more energy than the gap between 0 and 90%. The universe is not stopping you, you are simply running out of room to rotate. The speed of light through space is not a destination you reach. It is an asymptote, a boundary the curve approaches but never touches. And here is the part that should make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. This speed, this 300,000 kilometers per second, is not about light. Light happens to travel at this speed because photons have no rest mass. They interact with the Higgs field in a way that gives them no inertia at rest, so they cannot sit still. They have no choice but to move through space at the maximum rate. But the speed itself is a property of spacetime, not of light. It is the conversion factor between space and time, the exchange rate. How many meters of space equal 1 second of time in the currency of the universe? If light did not exist, if electromagnetic radiation had never arisen, this speed would still be there, sitting quietly in the equations, governing the structure of every event, every cause, every consequence. We might call it the speed of causality, because that is what it actually governs. It is the fastest rate at which any cause can produce any effect, the fastest rate at which information of any kind can get from one event to another. Not because of a rule, because of the shape of the space the events live in. Let me make this very concrete. Two people, Alice and Bob, stand 1 light year apart. Alice has a flashlight. She turns it on, the light crosses the gap in 1 year. That is the fastest Alice can possibly signal to Bob. Courses, no trick, no cleverness, no technology that could ever be invented will get a message from Alice to Bob faster than that. The geometry of space-time between them simply does not allow a more steeply tilted path. And here is why this matters so much, why the universe is so insistent about it. If Alice could send a signal faster than light, the logical consequences would be catastrophic. Because of how space and time are intertwined, a faster-than-light signal in one reference frame would, in a different reference frame moving relative to the first, arrive before it was sent. It would go backward in time. Bob would receive the message before Alice sent it. You could learn the answer to a question before you asked it. You could observe the result of an experiment before you performed it. Causes would follow their effects. This is not just weird, it is logically incoherent. If effects can precede causes, you can construct paradoxes that have no resolution. You could send yourself a message saying, "Do not send this message." If you obey the message, it was never sent. If it was never sent, you never received it. If you never received it, you do not obey it. If you do not obey it, you send it. Round and round, forever, with no consistent answer. The entire logical structure of reality, the notion that things happen in an order that makes sense, depends on causes preceding their effects. Always. For everyone. And the speed of light is what guarantees this. It is the cosmic spine of causality, the one structural commitment from which the coherence of the universe follows. Now, some of you might be thinking about quantum entanglement. Two particles prepared together in a special quantum state, then separated. When you measure one, the other seems to respond instantly, no matter how far apart they are. Does that violate what I just said? It does not. And the reason is precise. You cannot use entanglement to send a message. The correlations between entangled particles are real, and they are genuinely strange. Einstein called them spooky, but they cannot carry information. You cannot encode a choice at Alice's end and have it show up at Bob's end. The randomness of quantum measurement washes out any signal. Nature allows spooky correlations. It does not allow faster-than-light communication. The causal structure holds. Even in the weirdest corners of quantum physics, the speed of light as a causal limit is preserved. What about the expansion of the universe? You may have heard that very distant galaxies are receding from us faster than the speed of light. True, but they are not moving through space faster than light. Space itself is expanding. The distance between us is growing because the fabric of space-time is stretching. Imagine two ants on a rubber sheet. You pull the sheet, the ants get farther apart, but neither one crawled. The sheet changed. The speed limit applies to motion through space-time. It does not constrain space-time itself. The stage can grow. The actors on it still follow the rules. Let me pull everything together because the contrast between the two pictures matters, and I want it to sting a bit. The wrong picture says objects can travel at any speed, but nature has installed a barrier at the speed of light that blocks them from going faster. The barrier is mysterious. It requires some unknown force or mechanism to enforce. The right picture says every object always moves through space-time at exactly the speed of light. Speed through space is just the spatial component of that fixed total motion. The maximum possible speed through space occurs when all motion points into space and none remains for time. You cannot exceed it because there is no remaining motion to redirect. No barrier, no force, just the geometry of the universe and the fact that you are already using 100% of your space-time velocity, always. It is like asking someone who is giving away every dollar they earn to give more. 110% of your income does not exist, not because of a rule, because the concept is empty. I find this deeply beautiful. The speed of light is not a restriction imposed from outside the universe. It is not a regulation. It is a consequence of what the universe is. It emerges from the geometry of space-time the way the angles of a triangle emerge from the flatness of a plane. You do not need to enforce the angles of a flat triangle, adding to 180 degrees. That is what flatness means. You do not need to enforce the speed of light. That is what space-time means. Einstein did not discover a speed limit. He discovered that we live in a universe where space and time are facets of one structure, that everything moves through that structure at the same total rate, and that what we experience as motion through space is a rotation of that total motion away from the time direction. The speed of light is the magnitude of the arrow. It was never about light. It was about the deep, silent, breathtaking shape of reality itself. And once you see it that way, you stop asking, why can I not go faster? You find yourself asking something far more interesting. What does it mean that I have been moving at the speed of light my entire life and never once noticed? If you could choose how to aim your motion through space-time, more into space or more into time, which way would you point and why?